The moment my older sister pointed at me and said, "She's an unfit mother. Take her daughter." I thought that was the cruelest thing she'd ever done. I was wrong. The CPS investigator didn't respond. She quietly reached into her briefcase, pulled out a sealed file, and stared at the first page. Then she looked at my sister instead of me. The room went completely silent. My sister's smile vanished. Her hands started shaking. Finally, the investigator said, "Before we continue, there's something in this file that changes this entire case." At that moment, I realized I had never been the one under investigation. The social worker didn't knock. She stepped into my living room, looked me straight in the eyes, and said quietly, "We've received a report claiming you're an unfit mother." Across the street, my older sister leaned against her SUV with her arms folded and the kind of smile that only appears when someone thinks they've already won. She even waved. I waved back. Not because I understood what was happening, because I still believed she was my sister. What I didn't know was that the woman standing beside the social worker had already requested an old sealed family file before she ever rang my doorbell. And within the next 20 minutes, my sister's smile would disappear forever. If someone had told me a year earlier that my own sister would try to convince strangers I wasn't fit to raise my daughter, I would have laughed. Emily wasn't perfect. Neither was I. Like most sisters, we'd argued over holidays, borrowed clothes without asking, and disagreed about almost everything growing up. But I never imagined she'd become the kind of person who would weaponize a government agency against family. Then again, I also never imagined jealousy could grow quietly for years without anyone noticing. My name is Rachel. I'm 36 years old, and my daughter Lily is 8. People often assume being a single mother defines my entire life. It doesn't. It's simply one part of who I am. I own a small bakery just outside Columbus, Ohio. Nothing fancy. A corner shop with 6 tables, warm cinnamon rolls every morning, and regular customers who know each other by name. Most mornings begin before sunrise. By 5 o'clock, I'm already mixing dough while Lily sits at the counter finishing homework she insists on doing before school because she likes having afternoons free. She says the bakery smells like happiness. I think she's right. Life wasn't always this peaceful. 5 years earlier, my marriage had ended quietly. No screaming. No dramatic courtroom battle. Just 2 people who wanted different futures. Her father eventually moved to another state for work. He stayed involved, called every week, visited during school breaks, and always paid support on time. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but we respected each other enough to put Lily first. I considered that a success. Emily didn't. According to my older sister, a child needed a house with 2 parents under one roof. Anything else was a failure. At first, the comment sounded harmless. "You work too much. Lily probably misses having a full family. You can't do everything yourself forever." I smiled through them. Everyone has opinions. Family dinners became more uncomfortable over time. If Lily talked excitedly about helping customers at the bakery, Emily would laugh. Kids should be at home, not working. Lily wasn't working. She liked placing napkins on empty tables and handing cookies to regular customers. It made her feel important. Our parents usually changed the subject before arguments could start. Dad hated conflict. Mom always insisted Emily was just concerned. Concerned. That word became everyone's excuse. When Emily criticized my parenting, she was concerned. When she questioned every decision I made, she was concerned. When she reminded everyone that divorced mothers struggled to raise confident children, she was just concerned. Only later did I realize concern was simply the polite name people gave to constant judgment. The strangest part was that Emily had never been married. She didn't have children. Everything she believed about parenting came from articles she'd read online and opinions she'd collected from other people. Still, she spoke with absolute certainty, as though she were the expert and I was the student constantly failing her exam. Things became noticeably worse after the bakery started succeeding. For years, I barely broke even. Then one local food blogger featured my cinnamon rolls. Within weeks, customers lined up every Saturday morning. Corporate catering orders followed. I hired 3 employees. For the first time since my divorce, I wasn't counting every dollar before paying bills. I finally replaced my 15-year-old sedan. Nothing luxurious. Just a dependable SUV that wouldn't leave us stranded during Ohio winters. Emily noticed immediately. Business must be better than you admit. It is, I answered honestly. That's wonderful. She smiled, but her eyes didn't. From that day forward, every conversation somehow circled back to money. She wanted to know how much I earned, whether I planned to expand, whether I was dating anyone, whether Lily stayed alone while I baked early mornings. The questions came so naturally that I rarely stopped to wonder why she cared. Looking back now, she wasn't making conversation. She was collecting information. Little details, schedules, names, habits, pieces of a puzzle I didn't know she was building. 3 weeks before CPS arrived, Emily asked if Lily ever stayed overnight at the bakery apartment upstairs during busy weekends. I laughed. Never. We go home every night. She nodded thoughtfully. Just wondering. A week later, she asked whether Lily ever missed school because of bakery orders.
No.
Another nod. Another thoughtful smile. At Sunday dinner, she casually asked my mother whether she'd ever worried about me raising Lily alone. Mom looked surprised. Rachel's a wonderful mother. Emily didn't argue. She simply looked down at her plate, almost disappointed by the answer. I ignored every warning sign because I couldn't imagine my own sister planning something against me. Family earns the benefit of the doubt. Until they don't. The Tuesday everything changed started like every other day. Lily left for school with powdered sugar on her jacket because she'd hug me before I finished decorating pastries. I promised to wash it that evening. She laughed and ran toward the school bus. I watched until it disappeared around the corner. An hour later, someone knocked on my front door. 2 professionally dressed women stood outside. One introduced herself calmly. Good morning, Ms. Carter. I'm Denise. This is my colleague, Angela. Then she showed me her identification. We're with Child Protective Services. For just a second, the entire world went completely silent. Then Denise spoke again. We've received a report regarding concerns about your daughter's well-being. Before I could answer, I noticed movement across the street. Emily stood beside her SUV, watching,
Smiling.
as though she'd been waiting all morning for this exact moment. I took one slow breath, stepped aside, and said, Please come in. None of us knew that before leaving their office that morning, Denise had quietly requested one sealed family file that would soon change everything. Denise and Angela didn't rush. They didn't search through drawers or walk around my house looking for problems the way television dramas make people believe. Instead, they sat at my dining table, introduced themselves again, and explained every step of the process. We're here to make sure Lily is safe, Denise said gently. We also want to hear your side. I nodded. I understand. My voice surprised even me. It was steady. Maybe because panic wouldn't help my daughter. Maybe because deep down I knew the truth was on my side. They asked simple questions first. What time did Lily leave for school? Who picked her up every afternoon? Did anyone regularly care for her besides me? I answered everything honestly. Then they asked if they could look around the house. Of course. They walked room by room without saying much. Lily's bedroom was exactly as she'd left it that morning. Books stacked beside her bed. A half-finished puzzle on the floor. Soccer medals hanging beside drawings she'd taped to the wall herself. Angela smiled. She seems very creative. She is, I replied. She wants to be an architect this month. Angela laughed softly. Last month it was a veterinarian? I blinked. How did you know? My daughter changed careers every 3 weeks at that age. For the first time since they'd arrived, the room felt almost normal. The kitchen was clean. The refrigerator was full. School schedules were pinned neatly to the calendar. Emergency contact numbers hung beside the phone. Nothing matched the report they had received. I noticed Denise reading the complaint again. Her forehead tightened ever so slightly. She read one paragraph twice, then another. Finally, she looked at Angela. Does this wording sound familiar to you? Angela didn't answer immediately. Instead, she leaned over, reread the page, and slowly nodded. I was thinking the same thing. Neither woman explained what they meant. Denise excused herself and stepped onto the front porch to make a phone call. Through the window, I noticed Emily pretending to scroll through her phone across the street. Every few seconds, she glanced toward my house. Waiting. Watching. Almost impatient. 15 minutes later, another vehicle pulled into my driveway. A man in his early 60s stepped out carrying a thin brown archive envelope sealed with bright red tape. He greeted Denise quietly before the three of them spoke near the porch. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I saw Denise point toward the complaint, then toward the envelope. The older man carefully removed the seal. He handed Denise several aging documents. Even from inside the house, I recognized the yellowed paper. Those files had been sitting somewhere for years. Denise returned to the dining table carrying the folder. She looked thoughtful. Rachel, I'd like to ask you something. Of course. When you were younger, was there ever a family situation that involved child welfare services? The question caught me completely off guard. I searched my memory. Then something surfaced. Not about me. About someone else. I was 12, I said slowly. There was an investigation involving relatives after a misunderstanding. Denise exchanged another glance with Angela. Do you remember who provided most of the information? I frowned.
No.
I wasn't included. She looked back at the old documents. The reason we're asking is because several statements in today's anonymous complaint are almost identical to statements found in this archived file. I stared at her. Identical? Nearly word for word. A chill ran through me. How was that even possible? Denise carefully laid 2 pages beside each other. Names had changed. Dates had changed. But entire sentences matched. The same unusual phrases. The same descriptions. The same sequence of accusations. Someone hadn't simply filed a complaint. Someone had copied one. Angela quietly added, "That's uncommon enough that we have to understand why." Just then there was another knock at the door. I opened it. Emily stood there smiling politely. "I heard government cars outside," she said. "I just wanted to make sure everything's okay." Before I could answer, Denise stepped forward. "Miss Carter?" Emily's smile widened. "Yes, I'm Denise with Child Protective Services." I guessed. Denise remained calm. "We actually have a few questions for you, if you don't mind." Emily looked pleasantly surprised. "Of course. Anything to help." She walked inside with complete confidence. She sat across from Denise, without the slightest hint of concern. At first her answers came easily. Yes, she'd visited my home. Yes, she'd spent time with Lily. Yes, she cared deeply about her niece. Then Denise asked one simple question. "How did you become aware of the specific incidents described in this complaint?" Emily hesitated, only for a second, but it was the first crack. "I heard about them." "From whom?" She looked at me briefly. "I don't remember." Denise slid one page from the sealed file beside the anonymous complaint. "The wording here matches almost exactly." Emily's smile faded. "For us to understand the situation fully," Denise said evenly, "we need you to explain why 2 reports written years apart contain the same uncommon descriptions." The room fell silent. For the first time that day, my sister looked genuinely nervous. Nobody spoke for several long seconds. Emily kept staring at the 2 documents lying on the dining table as if they might somehow change on their own. Denise finally broke the silence. "Miss Carter, we're not asking you to explain family disagreements. We're asking you to explain why the language in this anonymous report closely mirrors language preserved in an archived family file." Emily forced a small laugh. "Maybe it's just a coincidence."
Denise didn't react.
"There are multiple uncommon phrases repeated in the same order. That isn't something we ignore." Emily shifted in her chair. I was only trying to protect Lily." "I appreciate your concern," Denise replied calmly. "Can you tell us what specific incident led you to believe Lily was unsafe?" Emily opened her mouth. Nothing came out. She looked toward me, almost expecting me to rescue her. I stayed quiet. For years, I had interrupted uncomfortable moments to keep peace in the family. Not this time. Denise waited patiently. Finally, Emily answered. I've heard things. From whom? I don't remember. Angela gently closed the sealed file. Every concern we investigate is important. That's why we verify information carefully. Today we've found that the observations described in the complaint aren't supported by what we've seen in this home. She glanced around the room. The environment is safe, organized, and appropriate. Then she looked back at Emily. And several details provided in the report appear inconsistent with the facts available to us. Emily's confidence disappeared completely. The woman who had been smiling across the street less than an hour earlier now couldn't maintain eye contact with anyone in the room. A few minutes later, my parents arrived. Apparently, Emily had called them before CPS even reached my house. She must have expected them to witness me being humiliated. Instead, they walked into a room filled with quiet professionalism. Mom immediately looked at me. "Rachel, what's happening?" Before I could answer, Denise introduced herself and calmly explained that the visit was nearly complete. She emphasized that cooperation from everyone had helped clarify the situation. Dad looked confused. "So, Lily's okay?" Denise smiled. "From everything we've observed today, yes." I watched relief wash across my father's face. Then his eyes shifted toward Emily. She looked down at the floor. Nobody accused her. Nobody raised their voice. She simply had nothing left to say. As the investigators packed their folders, Denise handed me a business card. "If you have questions later, you're welcome to call." I thanked her. Before leaving, she paused at the doorway. "I'll also say this." She looked directly at me. Children benefit most from stable, caring adults. Today we saw a mother who remained calm, cooperative, and focused on her daughter's well-being. Those words meant more to me than she probably realized. After they left, the house stayed silent. Emily stood near the front door for another moment. "I was worried," she said quietly. I looked at her.
No.
She frowned. "You wanted everyone else to think you were worried. There was a difference." She didn't argue. She simply picked up her purse and walked outside. She never looked back. Over the next several weeks, I made a decision that was far more difficult than arguing with my sister. I stopped trying to earn approval from people who had already decided who I was. Family dinners became less frequent. Phone calls became shorter. Peace slowly replaced anxiety. Lily never knew every detail of what had happened. She only noticed that I smiled more. I laughed more. And I wasn't checking my phone every few minutes, wondering what new criticism might be waiting. Months later, Mom visited the bakery alone. She helped frost cupcakes while customers came and went. Finally, she sighed. "I should have listened to you sooner." I reached across the counter and squeezed her hand. "We both learned something." She nodded. "We did." Today, Lily is still convinced our bakery smells like happiness. Every morning, she places fresh flowers on one of the empty tables before school. Customers think it's part of the decor. I know better. It's her way of making people feel welcome. Sometimes I think about the morning my sister smiled across the street, convinced she was about to prove I was an unfit mother. She believed one anonymous report would define my future. Instead, the truth did. Because in the end, the strongest evidence wasn't hidden inside a sealed file. It was the life my daughter and I had quietly built every single day, and that was something no false accusation could ever erase.